The Middle East is once again gripped by violence and turmoil. The conflict, now in its second week, has escalated dramatically, engulfing Israel, Gaza, and Lebanon. The situation is complex and volatile, with no easy solutions in sight. International concern is mounting as the death toll rises and the humanitarian crisis deepens. The fighting began with a surprise attack by Hamas on Israel, which responded with a massive military offensive on Gaza. The conflict has since spread to Lebanon, with Israel carrying out airstrikes against Hezbollah targets. The situation is further complicated by the involvement of Iran, which supports both Hamas and Hezbollah. The international community is struggling to find a way to de-escalate the situation and bring the violence to an end. The United Nations has called for a ceasefire, but so far these calls have gone unheeded. The conflict has already claimed the lives of hundreds of people, many of them civilians. The violence is having a devastating impact on the lives of millions more. Beirut was shaken on October 10th by Israeli airstrikes. The strikes targeted Hezbollah strongholds in the southern suburbs. Numerous casualties resulted, escalating regional tensions. The Lebanese government condemned the airstrikes as a violation of its sovereignty. Prime Minister Najib Mikati called for international intervention. The international community expressed deep concern. The airstrikes have raised fears of a wider conflict. The situation in Gaza is nothing short of catastrophic. The densely populated Palestinian enclave has been under relentless Israeli bombardment since the start of the conflict. Hospitals are overwhelmed, essential supplies are dwindling, and the death toll continues to climb. The Israeli military claims its strikes are targeting Hamas militants and infrastructure. However, the reality on the ground paints a different picture. Many of the casualties are civilians, including women and children. The indiscriminate nature of the attacks has drawn widespread international condemnation. The United Nations has warned of a dire humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza, with hospitals overflowing, a shortage of medical supplies, and limited access to clean water and sanitation. The situation is becoming increasingly desperate. The UN has called for an immediate ceasefire to allow humanitarian aid to reach those in need. The international community must act swiftly and decisively to alleviate the suffering in Gaza. Providing humanitarian assistance is crucial, but it is not enough. A political solution is urgently needed to address the root causes of the conflict and prevent further bloodshed. The conflict between Israel and Hamas has also heightened tensions between Israel and Iran. Iran is a staunch supporter of Hamas, providing the militant group with financial and military aid. Israel views Iran's involvement as a direct threat to its security. Following the Hamas attack, Israel accused Iran of being directly involved in planning and supporting the operation. Israeli officials have warned that they will not hesitate to take action against Iran if it continues to support terrorism against Israel. Iran has denied any direct involvement in the Hamas attack. However, Iranian leaders have expressed unwavering support for Hamas and condemned Israel's actions in Gaza. The escalating rhetoric between Israel and Iran has raised fears of a wider regional conflict. The United States has reaffirmed its commitment to Israel's security and warned Iran against any attempts to escalate the situation. The international community is closely watching the situation, urging both sides to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could lead to a further escalation of the conflict. Section 5: Lebanon caught in the crossfire. Lebanon, still recovering from years of internal strife and economic turmoil, finds itself caught in the crossfire of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The country's southern border with Israel has become a flashpoint, with Hezbollah firing rockets into Israel, and Israel responding with airstrikes. The Lebanese government has condemned both Hezbollah's rocket attacks and Israel's airstrikes. However, with Hezbollah being a powerful political and military force in Lebanon, the government's ability to rein in the group is limited. The Israeli airstrikes have caused significant damage to infrastructure in southern Lebanon, displacing thousands of civilians. The United Nations has expressed concern over the humanitarian situation in Lebanon, calling for an immediate end to the violence and respect for Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The conflict in Lebanon adds another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. The international community must work to prevent the situation in Lebanon from spiraling out of control and dragging the country into a wider regional conflict. Section 6: UN peacekeepers under attack. A troubling development. Adding to the growing concerns, UN peacekeepers stationed in southern Lebanon came under fire on October 10. The incident occurred near the border with Israel, where UNIFIL peacekeepers have been monitoring the situation. While the exact circumstances of the incident remain unclear, initial reports suggest that Israeli tank fire struck a UN observation post, injuring 2 peacekeepers. The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting to address the incident, demanding a full investigation. The attack on UN peacekeepers is a serious violation of international law and undermines the UN's efforts to maintain peace and stability in the region. The incident highlights the dangers faced by peacekeepers operating in volatile environments and the need to ensure their safety and security. The international community has condemned the attack on UN peacekeepers, calling for a thorough investigation and accountability for those responsible. The safety and security of UN personnel are paramount, and any attacks against them must be condemned in the strongest possible terms. Section 7. A glimmer of hope, international efforts for a ceasefire. Amidst escalating violence, there are glimmers of hope for a ceasefire. The US, Egypt, and France are engaging in intensive diplomatic efforts. Achieving a lasting ceasefire remains a challenge. The situation is complex with deep mistrust and conflicting demands. Hamas demands an end to the Gaza blockade, while Israel wants its citizens released. The international community must exert pressure for a ceasefire and meaningful dialogue. A ceasefire is essential for addressing the humanitarian crisis and sustainable peace. Section 8. The plight of civilians trapped and displaced. The ongoing conflict has had a devastating impact on civilians caught in the crossfire. In Gaza, families are trapped in their homes, unable to escape the relentless bombardment. Hospitals are struggling to cope with the influx of casualties, and essential supplies are running dangerously low. In Lebanon, thousands of people have been displaced from their homes in the south due to the fighting. Many are seeking refuge in schools, mosques, and other public buildings, which are ill-equipped to handle the influx of displaced persons. The international community must prioritize the protection of civilians and ensure their access to humanitarian assistance. This includes facilitating the delivery of medical supplies, food, water, and other essential items to those in need. Moreover, it is crucial to address the long-term needs of those affected by the conflict. This includes providing psychosocial support to those traumatized by the violence, rebuilding destroyed infrastructure, and creating opportunities for economic recovery. Section 9. A looming threat, terrorism and instability. The current conflict also highlights the persistent threat of terrorism and instability in the region. The initial Hamas attack on Israel is a stark reminder of the dangers posed by extremist groups operating in the region. The conflict has the potential to further destabilize the region and create opportunities for other extremist groups, such as ISIS, to exploit the chaos. The international community must remain vigilant and work to counter the threat of terrorism by addressing its root causes. This includes promoting dialogue and reconciliation, countering extremist ideologies, and addressing the grievances that fuel extremism. It also requires strengthening border security, sharing intelligence, and coordinating efforts to dismantle terrorist networks. The fight against terrorism requires a comprehensive and multifaceted approach that addresses not only the symptoms, but also the underlying causes of extremism. The international community must remain united and committed to this effort to ensure the safety and security of all people in the region. Section 10. The world responds: condemnation, aid, and calls for peace. The international community has responded to the escalating conflict with a mix of condemnation, humanitarian aid, and calls for peace. The United Nations, the European Union, and numerous individual countries have condemned the violence and called for an immediate ceasefire. Several countries have also pledged humanitarian aid to those affected by the conflict. The United States, for example, has announced a significant aid package for Gaza, while European countries are providing assistance to both Gaza and Lebanon. However, the international response has also been marked by divisions and disagreements. Some countries have been more vocal in their condemnation of Hamas, while others have focused their criticism on Israel's actions in Gaza. These divisions make it more challenging to find a unified and effective international response to the crisis. The international community must overcome its differences and work together to achieve a peaceful and just resolution to the conflict. Section 11. The path forward, towards a just and lasting solution. The path forward in the Middle East remains uncertain and fraught with challenges. A military solution is not the answer. Only through dialogue, diplomacy, and a commitment to peace can a lasting solution be found. The international community has a crucial role to play, pressuring all parties to agree to a ceasefire and engage in meaningful negotiations, providing humanitarian assistance to those affected by the conflict, addressing the root causes of the conflict, promoting dialogue, reconciliation, and a culture of peace. A just and lasting solution requires a commitment to peaceful coexistence, setting aside historical grievances and working together to build a better future. The road to peace will be long and arduous, but it is the only path that offers hope for a brighter future.